Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we ask that you like us, please subscribe, maybe leave comments, and you could even support us on Patreon if you wish. Today's guest is coming to us from London, England. And I'm really happy to have her on board. Her name is pretty peculiar because her name is peculiar. This is Peculiar Medinus, and she grew up understanding the importance of faith and spirituality with her early years deeply rooted in the Lutheran Church. Her childhood was filled with choir practices, Sunday school, and an unwavering commitment to attending church. Singing opened doors for her, including joining the adult choir as a young girl, where her love for music became intertwined with a growing connection to God. However, it wasn't until her teenage years, during a church program, that she experienced a turning point, answering an altar call that led to deeper hunger for the Word of God, a passion that reshaped her spiritual outlook. During her university years, as an undergraduate, this hunger translated into action. She started morning devotions in a private hostel, knocking on doors to invite others to join her in prayer. These moments brought about incredible connections with people, some of whom have become ministers. Professionally, her faith inspired her to embed spiritual reflections into her writing, beginning with a dedicated column in a newspaper. Over time, this platform enabled her to share impactful messages, eventually leading to the publication of her first book. Through life's challenges, from spiritual attacks to health crises, she witnessed God's hand move in extraordinary ways, solidifying her belief in His purpose for her to use faith and writing to uplift others. And she has done that in a major way, having published now 13 different books. So I'm going to now invite Peculiar Medinus to tell her spiritual journey from childhood till now, and then we'll talk about her writings. Peculiar, the mic is all yours.
First of all, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and talk about my spiritual journey. Growing up, I found myself between two parents in bed. But that was only for a very short period because my parents had a separation, although they didn't call it a divorce. But to me, they were actually divorced because they stopped living together. So afterwards, I started lying beside one parent. So I found myself beside my mother. I was between 4 and 6 years old. But I remember then, every morning, my mother would leave the bed, go on her knees, and pray. Then, as a little girl, I did not understand what she was doing, but I felt it was something meaningful. It was in the closet because she never opened any door or window until she had finished her prayers. My mother was very consistent with her prayers, and that forced me to listen because sometimes she would say things verbally and she would say some prayers for everyone else before herself. So actually, it was my mother who first gave me the understanding that there's someone very important yet invisible. that you can talk to. So from that, I grew up understanding the importance of faith and spirituality. I started to take a cue, and as a little girl, sometimes I would mimic my mother and pray to God. And then I also witnessed family members praying to this invisible God. I saw that my dad would never have a meal without a prayer. I only met one grandparent, her name Georgina, my maternal grandmother, who demonstrated so much faith. She became blind when I was a little girl. And I remember in that state, she would walk me to school as an infant. She was quite industrious, and despite her blindness, she continued to trade at that time. So it was a bittersweet experience because at times, some customers would deceive her by giving her bread labels. You know, in those days in Nigeria, you find labels in between bread wraps, and she would accept them thinking they were money. So despite that, she did several things that some blind people could not do, like cooking. And like my dad, my grandmother never had a meal without saying a prayer. So now I'm going to jump into my early years in the Lutheran Church. Growing up, I saw that my mother would go to church on Sundays. And the church was not just treated as a sacred place, but the church was treated as a special place. I remember my mom would buy me some beautiful clothes and tell me that those clothes were for church and could not be used, casually. She would just separate them from my casual clothes. So while other children saved their best outfits for parties, mine were always meant for Sundays. I grew up on an island in the Niger Delta. Right now, that's Niger Delta. I believe you know that Niger Delta because it's quite popular. It's in southern Nigeria. So that's where I grew up. So right now, I would say it's a town. I'll not call it an island anymore because now there is a bridge that is connecting the town to other cities. So right now, I'll say it's a town located on the banks of the Sombrero River. So the Sombrero River empties into the Atlantic Ocean. So the first church I attended, that's the Lutheran, still sits as one of the attractions in the town. The name of the town is Abonima. It's quite a popular place. So it also has a clock face, but not as big as Big Ben, now called the Elizabeth Tower here in London. One of the memories that never left me is at about 6 years old, on a Christmas Eve, I was placed on a stool to read the Bible in an adult service. And I remember that despite the adjustments, the lectern still went above my chest. I was really small. I read about the birth of Jesus from one of the four Gospels. Looking back now, I think that was the first time I witnessed Christ. So these moments stayed with me through my childhood years in the Lutheran church choir, where I continued to sing until my mid-teens. So the church also shaped my friendships and my upbringing. Most of my enduring relationships, even today, have their roots in church or Christian fellowships. I started enjoying going to church as a child because I would meet friends at Sunday school, and sometimes we spent our offering money at a sweet shop close by. That was naughty. Gradually, I became the lead singer of the children's choir. And despite my parents being strict, my mother always allowed me to attend choir practice. But then something happened. As a child, I was enrolled in the adult choir. My small frame was still swallowed in, these oversized robes. Some people actually call it fez and hats. Some people call it fez. That seemed too large for me. When I questioned why I was asked to join the adult choir, I was told that I could sing. Honestly, right now, I'm looking for that singing voice. I've had the privilege of assisting in leading and serving as a choir member in different Christian denominations. And honestly, music takes me on a journey. It does. But at a point in my Christian life, I started to understand the difference between singing and praise. I started to realize that praising God, goes beyond having a good voice. And I started to realize that what counts is a heartfelt praise and worship. But then in my teenage, or let's say at teen age, I had a turning point. So despite my upbringing, I had a conscience, but I lacked true conviction. So I was still doing things that I will not be able to do right now. As a teenager, during a holiday, I attended a church program and had a significant moment of answering an altar call, which had an impact on my relationship with God. I suddenly had a deep hunger for the word of God, a passion that reshaped my spiritual outlook. So my perception of faith shifted and I transitioned to I beg your pardon, a Pentecostal church. Okay, so where the teachings ignited a deeper understanding of what serving God meant. So I remember as an undergraduate in university then, I continued to worship at the Pentecostal church. But during my university years, this hunger translated into action. I started morning devotions in a private hostel, knocking on doors to invite others to join me in prayer. These moments brought about incredible connections with people, some of whom have become ministers today. Even the hostel owner, I remember there was a particular morning that the hostel owner had to join us in the morning devotion. I simply had a nudge, and I believe it was God leading me to invite others to join in prayer. So after my graduation, I met someone who told me that the morning devotion still held after I left school, and she attributed her academic success to it. I can only give glory to God for the lives transformed during that period. I also made some lasting friendships from those connections made during these prayer sessions. And well, I'm glad that some of them are ministers, and I thank God for the privilege and the opportunity of using me as a tool.
So at some
So
point,
after graduation, I started up as a journalist. Actually, journalism wasn't my first job. My first job was in civil service, but that was before my university days. I was a civil servant, and I worked for a few years at the age of 16. Okay, so but after graduation, I started up as a journalist, but was gradually inspired to embed spiritual reflections into my writing. Okay, so beginning with a dedicated column in a newspaper. And over time, this platform enabled me to share impactful messages, which led to the publication of my first book, The Female Preacher. Now, God's guidance profoundly influenced my life choices. He helped me lay aside personal ambition in exchange for His will. So while my days were occupied as a business writer, my nights were consumed with inspiration for faith-filled messages. So this passion rooted in God's word demanded an outlet. Initially, this led to contributions in a regional newspaper, as I earlier mentioned, where my reflections column resonated with readers. So quite a good number of readers were giving me feedback, and their feedback confirmed the impact my words were making. So this platform inspired me to expand my reach, leading to the publication of my first book, allowing me to share my message on a larger scale. So my motivation for writing books stems from my journey as a journalist, where I began incorporating the spiritual reflections into my work. Guided by God, I shifted my focus from personal ambition to sharing faith-driven messages. This passion found its initial expression in the newspaper column, which resonated with a lot of readers and confirmed the impact of my words. Encouraged by this feedback, I sought to expand my reach, ultimately leading to the publication of The Female Preacher. So my reflection articles were focused on biblical women that inspired me to write my first book. So my first book was actually dedicated to my mother, and I wrote about, on the dedication page, I wrote about how I watched her leave the bed very early in the morning, and then going on her knees to pray for other people before she could pray for herself. And I decided to take a cue from there. So that inspired me to write my first book, The Female Preacher, which is a wake-up call to women. The theme is on faith and relationships. And despite its title, the book also relates to men. Some men abuse their wives without realizing they do, and that's because they don't understand what submission means. So this book will help them understand it. So if you ask about my motivation for writing The Female Preacher, aside from it, from the fact that it stems from my reflection articles on biblical women, which inspired me to address the themes of faith and relationship. The book also serves as a wake-up call for women, but it also aims to educate men, particularly those who may unintentionally abuse their wives due to misunderstanding of submission, as I mentioned earlier. So ultimately, I hope to foster better understanding and healthier relationships through my work. So in my spiritual journey, I also encountered a lot of challenges. I had a lot of spiritual attacks. I had health crises. And this actually affected my faith, but not negatively, positively, because even though I had these challenges, the challenges actually gave me the pathway to have deeper faith in God. So my path has actually not been without its trial. I had this period of severe illness, and it tested my faith deeply, I must say. I remember there was this particular sickness I had, and despite every test that was conducted in the hospital, the doctors could find nothing wrong with me, but I was pining away. So I remember one of the doctors told me that this is a spiritual attack. So my spirit actually clung to God afterwards. So, but one fateful day, I was inspired to take the communion. After doing so, I finally experienced restful sleep and was miraculously healed. And a year after, I was involved in a ghastly motor accident in a remote area. Despite the odds, God's timing placed a willing young man on my path who rushed me to safety. So actually, these encounters reinforced my faith, reminding me of God's providence and purpose for my life. So the challenges made me witness God's hand move in extraordinary ways, solidifying my belief in his purpose for me to use faith and writing to uplift others. And through the spiritual attacks, delays, and setbacks, I came to realize life is mostly spiritual. Yeah, so these trials provided opportunities for me to exercise my faith and spiritual authority. Additionally, they revealed spiritual gifts bestowed upon me by God. So my faith increased, my prayer life also improved. Also, through every trial and triumph, God has carried me. He provided opportunities for me to serve, to grow, and to influence others through faith. From childhood memories of Sunday school to my present role as a writer and a servant of God, my life remains a testament to his grace. Every experience, be it joyous or challenging, has deepened my understanding and strengthened my resolve to work in faith. So recently, I published a book titled, "What Do You Think Ugly Means?" And that is one of the few books I've written. And I believe that this book, even though some people might not understand what's in the book, but then the essence of the book, "What Do You Think Ugly Means?" is to bring out God's original perspective of beauty. This is found in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, where it says, God saw all that he made and it was very good. So from the creator's standpoint, everything holds purpose and value. I remember when I had the ghastly motor accident, it gave me some scars on my body, and my older sibling was very worried. He looked at me and he was like, "Oh, my sister is not even married." And the thought now came to me that doesn't actually mean I'm ugly. God has a purpose, and I believe that looking at that scar will stand as a testament that I survived an accident. I will not see it as ugly. Okay. So once again, from the creator's standpoint, everything holds purpose and value. So it then means that you are ugly because you think you are. God has already said that everything he created was very good. So this is not logic. The dictionary defines ugly as unpleasant, repulsive, and unattractive, especially in appearance. Now, appearance is mostly a spiritual outlook. The world defines ugly from a surface level, and that is not how the dictionary defines it. Ugliness is deeply tied to behaviors that destroy love, peace, and unity. So these behaviors, collectively known as the works of the flesh, encapsulate the true picture of ugliness. So my motivation behind writing this book is to challenge the conventional understanding of beauty and ugliness by presenting God's original perspective in Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. It states that everything God created is very good, which implies that every individual has inherent purpose and value. So I aim to highlight that feelings of ugliness often stem from personal perceptions rather than objective truths. And the world tends to define ugliness superficially, focusing on appearance, but I argue that true ugliness is linked to negative behaviors that disrupt love, peace, and unity. By redefining ugliness in this way, I hope to encourage readers to see themselves and others through a more spiritual and purposeful lens. So those are actually the reason behind these important books that I have written. I believe that you have seen that book as well.
Yes, I have the book on display here. I was curious
Oh, thank
because
you.
you also wrote a book called A Synopsis of Health and Beauty.
Yes, I remember that book vividly.
So I
You
wonder
really made
about
your research.
your definition of beauty in that book and how it relates to your definition of ugly in this book.
Okay, so I remember that synopsis of health and beauty. Oh my God. You really made your research. You know, I wrote that book during the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I was just during the lockdown, I was thinking about so many things to do. So I was inspired to write that book, Synopsis of Health and Beauty. And if you look at the dedication page, you see that I dedicated it to my elder sister, you know, who was in the medical field. Because that period, she was taking care of our mother, who sadly passed away in 2022. And I remember one of those years I visited and I saw how caring she was. I saw the way she was taking care of my mother. And I said, oh, I'm going to write this book and then dedicate the book to my sister. So, yes, synopsis of health and beauty, I actually took that from a natural perspective. Okay, so I made my own research looking at what other people thought about beauty and what they still think about beauty. And then I had to take that. And again, I wrote that book to support so many people at that crucial period when everybody was in a lockdown because of a sickness. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do something to make that tremendous positive impact. So that was actually from the angle of those other people, the audience that I was serving. But then I grew at the time, and that was how many years ago? So, but after that, I have learned to see beauty from a different and a better perspective.
Okay. I was just curious because those are really two typically opposite concepts that we're dealing with. But you have a way in your book on what do you think ugly means, of really, I guess, showing us the positive side of what we might call ugly, and that uh, it is something that is just natural and part of God's plan, and that as as you said, uh, God made all of this and it was good. So whatever we think about things that we see as ugly, uh, there there's a positive aspect to that if we think about it in a certain light. So back at some point, you wrote a memoir, Mom, Matrix, and Moments. And that juxtaposition of those words, mom and matrix, I am curious about what it is in your experience of that word matrix as to how you applied that uh, to this, from what I've read, a beautiful uh, monument to your mother. So, how did matrix fit into all of that?
Yes, so matrix, is a big word. It has more than one meaning. Okay, so when you think about matrix, you think about the womb. Okay, and as you know, the woman has the womb, not the man. So when you're talking about the womb also means so many things. Okay, so there, my definition of matrix has so much to do with what we inherited from motherhood. If you look at that book, you will see that there is a part or a stage that a part that I left solely for motherhood. I wrote about motherhood because of my experience with my mother. She was a very loving person and she left a very good example of a mother. Okay, so I remember writing that book in grief because I spoke to my mom the night before she passed away. I spoke to her. Um, she was the last person I spoke with that night. And then the next morning, the news came that she had passed away. So I was devastated. And yeah, and then I was I was in grief. And the only way I could express my grief was to write that book. So I remember walking into a cafe and then I was just detached from everybody. I couldn't sleep. By the way, my mother was 80, but I still, to me, it was still a loss to me because I loved her so much and I believe she loved me so much. And there and then I started writing, and the word that came to me was matrix. Matrix. And I said, yeah, matrix. How am I going to fix this into the book? And then the idea came about how my mom, was able to. By the way, my mom had 9 children. I happen to be the eighth child. Okay, yeah, she gave birth to 9 children. In fact, it would have been 10, but then she had a stillbirth. She was going to have a twin at some point, and then she gave birth to 9 of us. And I started thinking about, because she was the only child of her mother. Okay, but then she gave birth to so many of us. But then I saw that we all had this replica. She was the harbinger of peace, very peaceful. She had manifested a lot of the fruit of the spirit. So that was inherent of somebody who actually have God in them. So that was a very good example I gave. So that was the matrix. So we took after her in so many ways, I remember my dad, sometime he would look at me and say to me, oh, you look like your mom in so many ways. You behave like your mom, you act like your mom. And that's because there was a passage, and that's the matrix. Yeah.
Okay.
So I know that it might not resonate with everybody, but yeah.
So it sounds like she she passed during the COVID years or just at the tail end of the COVID lockdowns. Was it COVID
Yeah,
that
exactly. Yeah, so she survived the COVID. She recovered. I was even planning to go and see her because she was based in Massachusetts. So I was planning to go and pay her a visit. But unfortunately, it didn't happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, a couple other questions that I had concerning your books. Uh, you wrote a book called Why Ween Halloween. And uh, I I guess I was a little surprised because I thought Halloween was an American invention. Uh,
Yeah, it is.
s-
Um,
so how did you
so
get
that's
tied
what so
into
many people
Halloween?
say. Okay, yeah, so that's a book that I quickly wrote because when I relocated to United Kingdom, I realized that people took Halloween seriously. I never knew anything about Halloween when I was in Nigeria, but when I moved here, I saw so many people talking about Halloween, and then I'll go to the shops, I'll see a lot of costumes, Halloween costumes. There and then I had to pause. I paused and I made my own research. And I said, oh, okay, so this actually doesn't resonate with me because I think that um, it's something fake. It's something that was copied from Christianity, but then it was done in a devilish way. Even though most Christians don't understand this. So at that point, I felt led to write that short book. So it's only available as an ebook. So I remember somebody else interviewed me about this book, Why Win Halloween? And I said, I'm going to look at the book again and also expand the writing on that. But yes, I don't think Halloween is something for a Christian. I don't believe in that.
No. Okay.
So that's actually the message that that book conveys. So I'm questioning why win Halloween? Yeah.
So what was it that had you move to London, England? How did that come about?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I was the business reporter with a regional newspaper in Abuja. And then after my first year, I was posted to London to represent the company, okay, as a journalist. So I was actually here as a foreign correspondent. So, but at the end of my contract, I stayed on United Kingdom because then I was being led out of journalism into authorship. So I decided to stay here because I felt that it would be more flexible for me to stay here and then yeah, keep writing.
So are you now a citizen uh, in England, or
Yes,
what's your status?
yes, I'm now a British. Yes.
Okay. So are you still practicing journalism, or are you fully dedicated to your writing and singing?
To be honest, I no longer do a lot of singing. That was in my younger, as I said, I'm still looking for that voice where I will sing and everybody will look at me. I remember those days I'll be leading praise and worship and I'll see people shedding tears. And within me, I'll be thinking, what is happening? But that doesn't happen again because with time, I changed from God, the Spirit of God moved me into doing other things. There was a particular time I was led into being a sanctuary keeper. That's just to clean the church. So instead of joining the choir, yeah, I became part of the cleaning group, sanctuary keeping. So I no longer sing as I used to, especially after I came to understand that singing and praise are not the same. That really genuine praise has to do with the heart. So I stopped focusing on my voice. So I don't know if I still have the singing voice anymore, but then there are other things I'm doing in the service of God. I do a lot of evangelism with my books. I do a lot of church evangelism as well. That's part of what I do. And also, I'm part of the Association of Christian Writers. So I contribute to their blog, Modern Writers blog, every month. They have a beautiful magazine known as the Christian Writer. The current edition has my article as well about parables. So if you're interested, if you go to the website, you'll be able to pick that up as well. So yes, I'm no longer a journalist. I'm now an author of Christian books.
So is that website acw.org?
No, so that's if you Google Association of Christian Writers, yes, so you'll find that. Yes, I think that's what it is.
Okay. Okay. In something that I read about you, it said that you invented the real gospel game. So I'm really curious, what is the real gospel game?
Really? Yeah, so it's not a popular game. You know, during the pandemic, I helped myself to be creative. Okay, I did so many things because I was not going out. I was just at home. Apart from having FaceTime with friends, family, there was actually nothing else I was doing. So I was inspired to do a lot of things. I also do a little bit of podcast, even though speaking English is not my gift, but then I tried my best to encourage people in any way I could. And podcast was one of those. And the second thing I did was creating a game. Okay. I've never had any experience, but the idea just came to me. And then there and then I had to put down the concept, drew the games, and that's how it happened. And then I checked online on the ways to make all these table games and all whatnot, and then I was able to make some table games, and the first game I was able to well, I'll call that an invention because nobody else has done that. So the cards on the fruit of the spirit. Okay, so that's the name of the first game is 9 fruits. So I was inspired to create a game on the fruit of the spirit. And then the second one is on the Beatitudes. That's a box game. Very interesting. I used to play with friends. And then the other one is on miracles. That's also in a box. Yes, so yeah, so that's the collection is Real Gospel Game. And I have the trademark.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to play this game, where would they find it?
Yes, so I have the website. If you go to realgospelgame.com, you'll be able to have access to that. But then um, the manufacturer is Game Crafter. Okay. You're based in United Kingdom, in United States. So I think the quickest way for you to have the games will be to go to the Game Crafter web page. So if you go to the Game Crafter web page and just Google Real Gospel Game, you will see a collection of my games.
All right. Now, I am curious about your statement. It just came to me. So, when you get these inspirations, are you in a space of meditating, in a space of prayer, in just a space of silence? How do these inspirations just come to you?
Yes, so I get inspired in so many ways. In so many ways. But for this particular one, I was inspired while I was lying down in bed. It was a quiet moment. I remember me lying down, and there and then it just flashed, a real gospel game. And so there's something about me. Once I get all this inspiration, I don't just sit with them. I do something about them. Okay, so yeah, so immediately I got that. I got up and I wrote it down on a piece of paper, real gospel game. And then there's something I've discovered about life. Okay. Once you take a step, you'll see that there'll be a new opening. I don't know if that happens to everybody, but that happens to me a lot. So, yeah, immediately after writing the title, I left it there and then it came again. I should do the first game on the fruit of the spirit. And then the ideas came and I started writing about the games and how to play the fruit of the spirit and all that. Yeah. So that's what then immediately I finished the first game. The idea for the next one, the Beatitudes came. I designed it and then put it out. And then while working on the Beatitudes, the idea for the miracle game came. And then I put it down again. And then, yeah. So I have a collection of 3 games under Real Gospel Games. One, 9 fruits on the fruit of the Spirit. The second one, the Beatitudes. And the third, miracles.
Okay, do you think that's the end of your games now? You've exhausted
I don't think
possibilities?
so. I don't think so. More will come.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, in the experiences that I've discussed with other people on this podcast, what I have learned is that the more you listen and act upon what you're told, what you receive, the more that you do that, the more things come to you, because
that's very true.
You've opened up a channel to spirit, that then things begin to flow through that channel as quickly as you can deal with them. So it sounds like you are far from done with not just games, but with your writing of books. So is that how you feel? Like you've got a lot of energy behind this and it will just continue on and on?
Yeah, so I always get inspired to do things, and mostly in line with the scriptures, and I don't waste my time doing them. And one thing I'll always appreciate God for is He had always given me the resources and the opening to do that and the support. Because I remember when I got this inspiration to do the game, I was like, oh my God, who am I going to meet? And then suddenly I attended a women's meeting, and then online it was a virtual meeting, and then somebody else who had tried to make a game was talking about how she went about it. So there and then I had to contact her, and then she talked me into having the trademark. Okay, so that's how I was able to handle the legal aspects of it. So that's what I believe, that was God. He made our paths to cross for me to know how to go about the legal aspect of the game. So
That sounds very
yeah.
similar to how I started this podcast. Uh,
Oh.
so it was just an inspiration, and then I found some people who could help me, who were mentors, and taught me what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, and that's very important.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Okay. So in another part of your life, you also work and make money doing other things, or is all of your income from journalism and your books? Because I saw that
Yeah.
you had some experience with uh, media corporations and commercial setups. So, what about that part of your life? How has that proceeded?
Yeah, so currently I have a part-time job, okay, in operations. The job is part-time because I believe that job is not the same thing as work. So my work is my ministry, and that's my primary assignment. So, but you see, I actually don't make a lot of money from my books unless um, I market them, you know. So I have a job, and the job is for me to have an income. Okay. So I work in operations on part-time, and I also volunteer. So I volunteer as a career coach. Okay, so that's just to add to my experience. Okay, so that's in a way is helping me um, with my in the coaching experience, and also, as I mentioned earlier, I contribute to other people like the Association of Christian um, Writers. I contribute to them with my monthly blogging, and I believe that so many lives are touched positively with the blogs. Okay, so I'm not the only person blogging for the Association of Christian Writers. There are quite a good number of people doing that, but in a way, I find fulfillment in doing that. I'm also a ghostwriter, so I ghostwrite for people. So I'm actually with a ghostwriting company, and they hire me to ghostwrite for people. So that's actually not so frequent, but yeah, so in a way that also gets me some income. And I'm also an independent publisher. I support people to publish their books sometimes, but not all the time.
Uh-huh. So you're a busy lady.
Very busy. Very busy, yeah.
Well, I thank you for taking the time out to spend time with us on your spiritual journey and to share your journey with us. I will have links from my website to your information. So if people want to follow up with some of your books or your blog or some of the other things that you do, they can find that uh, on my website. But at the end of each podcast, I always ask the guest to leave the audience with a few words of wisdom. So this is your opportunity with this particular group of people to leave
Yeah.
them with whatever message you would like.
Okay, so my message to anybody that is listening to this podcast is believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Don't focus on the negative aspects of whatsoever happens in your journey, in your life journey. And also remind yourself that life is mostly spiritual. The spiritual controls the physical. So no matter what you do, always remember that there is a creator up there, and with him, there is nothing that is impossible. Anything that you want to achieve, you'll be able to achieve as long as it aligns with his purpose. So that's the message I'm leaving for every listener of this podcast. And I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today.
Okay, it's been a great experience. So, audience,
Thank you
as
both.
always, take what you've heard and incorporate what resonates with you into your life and put the rest on a shelf until you're ready to deal with it. Until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.